I woke up this morning to news that Sean Combs, aka Puff Daddy, aka P. Diddy, aka every other ridiculous puppy name that he has chosen over the years, has been indicted. Before I go through his now unsealed indictment, I thought I would go over briefly who Sean Combs is for those who don't know. Sean was born November 1969 in Harlem, New York. He was a talent director at Uptown Records before creating his own label, Bad Boy Records, in 1993. This is where he discovered and brought us the notorious B.I.G., and both was B.I.G.'s manager and hype guy. Also, Faith Evans, Biggie's wife, was signed to the label. In the 2000s, he also signed artists like French Montana, Machine Gun Kelly, Janelle Monáe, and others. And I personally believe that he was coasting on Biggie's success and used his death to continue to profit from Biggie. In the Diddy arena alone. Last night, Sean Combs was arrested in New York. He's accused of racketeering, sex trafficking, and transportation to engage in prostitution. Prosecutors allege he threatened and coerced women and others around him to fulfill his sexual desires. Diddy is accused, as was R. Kelly, to using sensitive, embarrassing, and incriminating recordings to ensure the continued obedience of his victims. As with R. Kelly, Combs also used his employees to carry out, facilitate, and cover up his abuse and commercial sex. Combs offered to post a $50 million bond and to wear a GPS monitoring just to be released from jail. As it stands now, the judge has denied bond and Combs remains behind bars. Court, Southern District of New York. United States of America versus Sean Combs, aka Puff Daddy, aka P. Diddy, aka Diddy, aka PD, aka Love, the defendant. Count 1, racketeering conspiracy. The grand jury charges. Overview. 1. For decades, Sean Combs, aka Puff Daddy, aka P. Diddy, aka Diddy, aka PD, aka Love, the defendant, abused, threatened, and coerced women and others around him to fulfill his sexual desires, protect his reputation, and conceal his conduct. To do so, Combs relied on the employees, resources, and influence of the multifaceted business empire that he led and controlled, creating a criminal enterprise whose members and associates engaged in and attempted to engage in, among other crimes, sex trafficking, forced labor, kidnapping, arson, bribery, and obstruction of justice. Number 2, Sean Combs, aka Puff Daddy, aka P. Diddy, aka Diddy, aka PD, aka Love, the defendant, operated his business headquartered at various times in Manhattan and Los Angeles under a variety of United States-based corporate entities, including Bad Boy Entertainment, Combs Enterprises, and Combs Global, collectively the Combs business. Corporate entities in the Combs business included, among the other things, record labels, a recording studio, an apparel line, an alcoholic spirits business, a marketing agency, and a television network and media company. 3. At all times relevant to this indictment, Sean Combs, aka Puff Daddy, aka P. Diddy, aka Diddy, aka PD, aka Love, the defendant, engaged in a persistent and pervasive pattern of abuse toward women and other individuals. This abuse was at times verbal, emotional, physical, and sexual. As part of his pattern of abuse, Combs manipulated women to participate in highly orchestrated performances of sexual activity with male commercial sex workers. At times, Combs and others acting at his direction, made arrangements for women commercial sex workers to fly to Combs' location. Combs ensured participation from the women by, among other things, obtaining and distributing narcotics to them, controlling their careers, leveraging his financial support, and threatening to cut off the same, and using intimidation and violence. Physical abuse by Sean Combs, aka Puff Daddy, aka P. Diddy, aka Diddy, aka PD, aka Love. The defendant was recurrent and widely known. On numerous occasions from at least in or about 2009 and continuing for years, Combs assaulted women by, among other things, striking, punching, dragging, throwing objects at, and kicking them. These assaults were at times witnessed by others and included one instance at a Los Angeles hotel in or about March 2016. which was captured on video and later publicly reported, where Combs kicked, dragged, and threw a vase at a woman as she was attempting to leave. When a member of the hotel security staff intervened, Combs attempted to bribe the staff member to ensure silence. Combs' violence was also not limited to these women. It extended to his employees, witnesses to his abuse, and others. 5. Sean Combs, aka Puff Daddy, aka P. Diddy, aka Diddy, aka PD, aka Love. The defendant used the Combs business, including certain employees, to carry out, facilitate, and cover up his abuse and commercial sex. Those employees, including security staff, household staff, personal assistants, and high-ranking supervisors, and other close associates, acted as Combs intermediaries, and their conduct was facilitated and assisted by Combs controlling the Combs business. The Combs enterprise. Number 6. From at least in or about 2008 through on or about the date of the filing of this indictment, Sean Combs, aka Puff Daddy, aka P. Diddy, aka Diddy, aka PD, aka Love, the defendant, and others known and unknown, were members and associates of a criminal organization, the Combs Enterprise, or the quote-unquote enterprise. Members and associates of the Combs Enterprise engaged in and attempted to engage in, among other activities, sex trafficking, forced labor, interstate transportation for purposes of prostitution, coercion, and enticement to engage in prostitution, narcotics offenses, kidnapping, arson, bribery, and obstruction of justice. I give this feel like R. Kelly all over again. It just seriously sounds like R. Kelly. Number 7, the Combs Enterprise, including its leadership, its members, and its associates, constituted an enterprise. As defined by Title 18, United States Code, Section 1961-4, that is, a group of individuals associated in fact, although not a legal entity. The Combs Enterprise consisted of Sean Combs, aka Puff Daddy, aka P. Diddy, aka Diddy, aka PD, aka Love, the defendant. 2. Entities within the Combs business, including, but not limited to, Bad Boy Entertainment, Combs Enterprises, and Combs Global. 3. Individuals employed by and associated with the Combs business. And 4. Others known and unknown. 8. The Combs Enterprise constituted an ongoing organization whose members function as a continuing unit for a common purpose of achieving the objectives of the Combs Enterprise. The Combs Enterprise was engaged in, and its activities affected interstate and foreign commerce. The Combs Enterprise operated in the Southern District of New York and elsewhere. Constituted an ongoing organization whose members function as a continuing unit for a common purpose of achieving the objectives of the Combs Enterprise. The Combs Enterprise was engaged in, and its activities affected interstate and foreign commerce. The Combs Enterprise operated in the Southern District of New York and elsewhere. 9. At all times relevant to this indictment, Sean Combs, aka Puff Daddy, aka P. Diddy, aka Diddy, aka PD, aka Love, the defendant, was the leader of the Combs Enterprise. 10. Sean Combs, aka Puff Daddy, aka P. Diddy, aka Diddy, aka PD, aka Love, the defendant, and others known and unknown, participated in unlawful and other activities related to the conduct of the Combs Enterprise affairs. These individuals included certain Combs business employees, such as members of Combs security staff, household staff, personal assistants, and high-ranking supervisors, as well as close associates of Combs Enterprise. 11. The purposes of the Combs Enterprise included the following: A, operating a global business in the media, entertainment, and lifestyle industries, including, among other things, record labels, a recording studio, an apparel line, an alcoholic spirits business, a marketing agency, and a television network and media company. B, preserving, protecting, promoting, and enhancing the power, reputation, and brand of Sean Combs, aka Puff Daddy, aka P. Diddy, aka Diddy, aka PD, aka Love, the defendant, as a musician, entrepreneur, and figure in the entertainment industry. C, enriching members and associates of the enterprise, including its leader, Combs and in particular those who demonstrated loyalty to Combs and willingness to conceal his crimes. D. Preserving, protecting, promoting, and enhancing the power of the Combs enterprise, including the power of its leader, Combs, through violence, use of firearms, threats of violence, coercion, and verbal, emotional, physical, and sexual abuse. Fulfilling the personal desires of Combs, particularly, can't say that word today, those related to Combs' sexual gratification, including through the exploitation of women and the use of commercial sex workers. F. Enabling Combs and other members and associates of the Combs enterprise to engage in unlawful acts of violence, including sexual violence, sex trafficking, forced labor, interstate transportation for purposes of prostitution, coercion, and enticement to engage in prostitution, narcotics distribution, and other crimes, and concealing the commission of such acts. Absolute loyalty from members of Combs enterprise, including through acts of violence and threats, and H. Protecting the Combs enterprise and its members and associates, including Combs, from detection and prosecution by law enforcement authorities through acts of intimidation, manipulation, bribery, and threats of retaliation against individuals who witnessed the crimes committed by members and associates of the enterprise. 12. Means and methods of the enterprise. 12. Among the means and methods by which Sean Combs, aka Puff Daddy, aka P. Diddy, aka Diddy, aka PD, aka Love, the defendant, and other members and associates of the Combs enterprise conducted and participated in the conduct of the affairs of the Combs enterprise included the following. Other members and associates of the Combs enterprise wielded the power and prestige of Combs' role at the Combs business to intimidate, threaten, and lure female victims into Combs' orbit, often under the pretense of a romantic relationship. Combs then used force, threats of force, and coercion to cause victims to engage in extended sex acts with male commercial sex workers at Combs referred to as, among other things, quote unquote, freak-offs. Freak-offs were elaborate and produced sex performances that Combs arranged, directed, masturbated during, and often electronically recorded. In arranging these freak-offs, Combs, with the assistance of members and associates of the Combs enterprise, transported and caused to be transported commercial sex workers across state lines and internationally. Freak-offs occurred regularly, sometimes lasted multiple days, and often involved multiple commercial sex workers. During freak-offs, Combs distributed a variety of controlled substances to victims, in part to keep the victims obedient and compliant. Sometimes, unbeknownst to the victims, Combs kept videos he filmed of victims engaging in sex acts with commercial sex workers. After freak-offs, Combs and the victims typically received IV fluids to recover from the physical exertion and drug use. My God. Sorry. B. Members and associates of the Combs enterprise, including high-ranking supervisors, security staff, household staff, personal assistants, and other Combs business employees, facilitated the freak-offs by, among other things, booking hotel rooms for the freak-offs, stocking the hotel rooms in advance with the required freak-off supplies, including controlled substances, baby oil, lubricant, extra linens, and lighting. Cleaning the hotel rooms after the freak-offs to try to mitigate room damage. Arranging for travel for victims, commercial sex workers, and Combs to and from freak-offs. Resupplying Combs with requested supplies, delivering large sums of cash to Combs to pay the commercial sex workers, and scheduling the delivery of IV fluids. This guy is seriously a monster. I'm sorry. In or about March 2024, during searches of Combs' residences in Miami, Florida, and Los Angeles, California, law enforcement seized various freak-off supplies, including narcotics and more than 1,000 bottles of baby oil and lubricant. Combs subjected victims to physical, emotional, and verbal abuse to cause the victims to engage in freak-offs. Combs maintained control over his victims through, among other things, physical violence, promises of career opportunities, sounds familiar, granting and threatening to withhold financial support, and by other coercive means, including tracking their whereabouts, dictating the victim's appearance, monitoring their medical records, controlling their housing, and supplying them with controlled substances. During and separate from freak-offs, Combs, among other things, hit, kicked, threw objects at, and dragged victims at times by their hair. These assaults often resulted in injuries that took days or weeks to heal. Combs also threatened victims' careers and livelihoods, including if they resisted participating in freak-offs. Victims believed they could not refuse Combs' demands without risking their financial or job security, or without repercussions in the form of physical or emotional abuse. Combs also used the sensitive, embarrassing, and incriminating recordings that he made during freak-offs as collateral to ensure the continued obedience and silence of the victim. Associates of the Combs enterprise, including Combs' security personnel, at times carried firearms. On more than one occasion, Combs himself carried or brandished firearms to intimidate and threaten others, including victims of and witnesses to his abuse. In or about March 2024, during searches of Combs' residences in Miami, Florida, and Los Angeles, California, law enforcement seized firearms and ammunition, including 3 AR-15s with defaced serial numbers, as well as a drum magazine. Members and associates of the Combs enterprise enabled Combs control over victims by following his directions regarding financial payments to victims, advancing or suppressing the victims' career opportunities, and acquiring the controlled substances Combs used to keep the victims compliant. Members and associates of the Combs enterprise at times witnessed Combs' violence toward the victims or the victims' injuries caused by Combs without intervening. Instead, members and associates of the Combs enterprise helped conceal the violence and abuse by, among other things, assisting Combs in monitoring and preventing victims from leaving locations such as hotels or Combs residences. These occasions included instances in which a victim was required to remain in hiding, sometimes for several days at a time, to recover from injuries Combs inflicted without being publicly observed. Members and associates of the Combs enterprise also assisted Combs in locating and contacting victims who attempted to flee his abuse. Employees, witnesses to his abuse, or others threatened Combs' authority or reputation. Combs and members and associates of the enterprise engaged in acts of violence, threats of financial and reputational harm, and verbal abuse. These acts of violence included kidnapping and arson. In addition, on multiple occasions, Combs threw both objects and people, as well as hit, dragged, choked, and shoved others. When Combs' authority or reputation was threatened by the possibility of negative publicity, or legal or law enforcement action against him, including in or about late 2023, following public allegations of Combs' crimes, Combs and members and associates of the enterprise pressured witnesses and victims, including through attempted bribery, to stay silent and not report what they experienced or knew to law enforcement. On phone calls, Combs and other members and associates of the enterprise, among other things, provided these victims and witnesses with a false narrative of events in an effort to conceal Combs' crimes. Combs caused these calls to be recorded on at least 2 occasions. So not only that, he's a dumb criminal. The Racketeering Conspiracy, 13. From at least in or about 2008 through on or about the date of the filing of this indictment in the Southern District of New York and elsewhere, Sean Combs, aka Puff Daddy, aka P. Diddy, aka Diddy, aka PD, aka Love, the defendant, and others known and unknown, being persons employed by the associated with the Combs enterprise, described in paragraphs 6 through 12 of this indictment, an enterprise engaged in and the activities of which affected interstate and foreign commerce, knowingly conspired, confederated, and agreed together and with each other to violate the racketeering laws of the United States, to wit, Title 18, United States Code, Section 1962, C, that is to conduct and participate directly and indirectly in the conduct of the affairs of the Combs enterprise through the pattern of racketeering activity as that term is defined in our Title 18, United States Code, Sections 1961 1 and 1961 5, consisting multiple acts involving kidnapping chargeable under the following provisions of state law: California Penal Code 207, kidnapping; California Penal Code 21A 664, attempt; California Penal Code 31, aiding and abetting; and California Penal Code 182, conspiracy. B, multiple acts involving arson chargeable under the following provisions: state law, California Penal Code 451, arson; California Penal Code 21A 664, attempt; California Penal Code 31, aiding and abetting; and California Penal Code 182, conspiracy. C, multiple acts involving bribery chargeable under the following provisions of state law: California Penal Code 137, bribery of a witness; Penal Code 21664, attempt; California Penal Code 31, aiding and abetting; and California Penal Code 182, conspiracy. Sideways here, because instead of reading every single one of those penal code numbers, I'm going to kind of ease it up a little bit. So the multiple acts involving bribery chargeable under those codes, and the aiding and abetting and the conspiracy, all of that. And D states multiple acts indictable under Title 18 relating to tampering with a witness, victim, or an informant. E is multiple acts indictable under Title 18 relating to forced labor. F is multiple acts indictable under 18 also, which is relating to sex trafficking, again under Title 18 relating to transportation and inducement to travel for purposes of prostitution and other illegal sexual activities. H, multiple offenses involving the possession with intent to distribute or distribution of narcotics and controlled substances, including cocaine, oxycodone, alprazolam. I'm not going to say that whole word, but basically amphetamines. Yeah, somebody else can do all of the technical ones on here. I know ketamine, but I can't say some of the other ones. So lots of drugs. 14, it was a part of the conspiracy that Sean Combs, aka Puff Daddy, aka P. Diddy, aka Diddy, aka PD, aka Love, the defendant agreed that a conspirator, 2 acts of racketeering activity in the conduct of the affairs of the Combs enterprise. Notice the special sentencing factor. 15, from at least in or about 2009 up to and including in or about 2018 in the Southern District of New York and elsewhere, as part of his agreement to conduct and participate in the conduct of the affairs of Combs enterprise through a pattern of racketeering activity, Sean Combs, aka Puff Daddy, aka P. Diddy, aka Diddy, aka PD, aka Love, the defendant agreed to, in and affecting interstate and foreign commerce, knowingly recruit, entice, harbor, transport, provide, obtain, advertise, maintain, patronize, and solicit by any means a person knowing and in reckless disregard of the fact that means of force, threats of force, fraud, and coercion, as described in Title 18, United States Code, Section 1591E, to and any combination of such means would be used to cause the person to engage in commercial sex act in violation of Title 18. United States Code, Section 1591A1 and B1. Title 18, United States Code, Section 1962D. Count 2, sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion. Victim 1. The grand jury further charges 16, from at least in or about 2009 up to and including in or about 2018 in the Southern District of New York and elsewhere, Sean Combs, aka Puff Daddy, aka P. Diddy, aka Diddy, aka PD, aka Love, the defendant, in and affecting interstate and foreign commerce, knowingly recruited, enticed, harbored, transported, provided, obtained, advertised, maintained, patronized, and solicited by any means a person knowing and in reckless disregard the fact that means of force, threats of force, fraud, and coercion as described in Title 18 again. Okay. United States Code Section 1591E2 and any combination of such means would be used to cause the person to engage in a commercial sex act and attempted, aided, and abetted and willfully caused the same to wit, Combs recruited, enticed, harbored, transported, and maintained a person, victim one, and attempted, aided, and abetted, and willfully caused victim one to engage in commercial sex acts, knowing and in reckless disregard of the fact that victim one was engaging in commercial sex acts as a result of force, fraud, and coercion. Did I mention the fact this guy was a monster? Count 3, transportation to engage in prostitution. The grand jury further charges this piece of shit. 17, from at least in or about 2009 up to and including in or about 2024 in the Southern District of New York and elsewhere, Sean Combs, aka Puff Daddy, aka P. Diddy, aka Diddy, aka PD, aka Love, the defendant, knowingly transported an individual in interstate and foreign commerce with intent that the individual engage in prostitution and attempted, aided, and abetted, and willfully caused the same to it, Combs, transported, aided, and abetted, and willfully caused the transportation of female victims and commercial sex workers in interstate and foreign commerce on multiple occasions with the intent that they engage in prostitution. This guy's a piece of... I don't know what's wrong with these people. Forfeiture allegations. 18. As a result of committing the offense alleged in count 1 of this indictment, Sean Combs, aka Puff Daddy, aka P. Diddy, aka Diddy, aka P. Diddy, aka Love, the defendant shall forfeit to the United States pursuant to Title 18 United States Code Section 1963 any and all interests the defendant acquired or maintained in violation of Title 18 United States Code Section 1962. Any and all interests in securities of claims against the property or contractual rights of any kind affording a source of influence over the enterprise named and described herein, which the defendant established, operated, controlled, conducted, and participated in the conduct of in violation of Title 18 United States Code Section 1962, and any and all property constituting and derived from proceeds obtained directly and indirectly said offense including, but not limited to, a sum of money in United States currency representing the amount of proceeds traceable to the commission of said offense. 19. As a result of committing the offense alleged in count 2 of this indictment, Sean Combs, aka Puff Daddy, aka P. Diddy, aka Diddy, aka P. Diddy, aka Love, the defendant shall forfeit to the United States pursuant to Title 18 United States Code Section 1594 any and all property, real and personal, involved in, used, or intended to be used to commit or facilitate the commissions of said offense, and any and all property traceable to such property, any and all property, real and personal, constituting or derived from proceeds obtained directly or indirectly as a result of said offense, including but not limited to a sum of money in the United States currency representing the amount of property involved in said offense and proceeds traceable to the commission of said offense. As a result of committing the offense alleged in count 3 of this indictment, Sean Combs, aka Puff Daddy, aka P. Diddy, aka Diddy, aka P. Diddy, aka Love, the defendant shall forfeit to the United States pursuant to Title 18 United States Code Section 2428 any and all property, real and personal, constituting or derived from proceeds obtained directly or indirectly as a result of said offense, and any and all property, real or personal, that was used or intended to be used to commit or facilitate the commission of said offense, and Title 18 United States Code Section 981 A1C and Title 28 United States Code Section 2461 any and all property, real and personal, that constitutes or is derived from proceeds traceable to the commission of said offense, including but not limited to a sum of money in United States currency representing the amount of proceeds traceable to the commission of said offense, and then substitute assets provision. If any of the above described forfeitable property as a result of any act or omission of the defendant. A, cannot be located upon the exercise of due diligence. B, has been transferred or sold to or deposited with a third person. C, has been placed beyond the jurisdiction of the court. D, has been substantially diminished in value. Or E, has been commingled with other property which cannot be subdivided without difficulty. It is the intent of the United States pursuant to Title 18, United States Code, Section 1963M, Title 21, United States Code, Section 853P, and Title 28, United States Code, Section 2461C, to seek forfeiture of any other property the defendant up to the value of the above forfeitable property. And it is signed by Damian Williams, U.S. Attorney. And that was exhausting. And it really just reads like it is another R. Kelly case all over again. It's pretty disgusting. I'm curious as to what people think his defense is going to be.